The calm that settled after the sit-down special was the kind that doesn't last. It was the quiet of a room where everyone's holding their breath, waiting for someone to crack first. Bambi and Erica had walked out of that neutral stage with binders, signatures, and a rare moment of solidarity that made the audience buzz. They hadn't hugged for the cameras, but they'd sat side by side in a way that made producers shift in their chairs. Online, fan pages were already calling it a power alliance, and hashtags like hashtag Team Bam and E trended for days. The public wanted to believe in the unlikeliest of truces, and for a brief moment, it looked like the two women might actually give it to them. Then, 2 weeks later, Tasha K posted 7 words on her feed that ripped the stitches wide open. What if your ally was also your enemy? The post was just text on a black background, but in her world, that was all it took. Comments exploded under it, asking for names, for proof, for the next grenade. The answer came 24 hours later in the form of a 3-minute audio clip. Tinny, but clear, recorded in the muffled chaos of a green room. The first voice was Bambi's, low and sharp, speaking to someone she called Baby, her stylist. Fans quickly realized. Erica only came to save her image, she said, her tone the verbal equivalent of a side-eye. She doesn't care about my pain. There was a rustle, a laugh that wasn't amused. Then came the second half of the clip, Erica's voice, a little louder. Talking to someone her followers recognized as her makeup artist. Bambi's just building leverage for her lawsuit, she said. She's not here for me. She's using me. The audio hit like a match in dry grass. By noon, hashtag Bambi BACKSTABBER and hashtag Erica Snake were trending side by side. And every gossip blog from Atlanta to LA had the clip embedded in their headlines. The comments weren't just angry, they were personal, fans choosing sides like it was election season, DM inboxes filled with accusations, old photos were dug up and misinterpreted, and strangers started sending the kind of messages that made people lock their doors. Even people who'd been in their corners during the hotel clip scandal were backing away, muttering about how some alliances were never meant to last. VH1 didn't waste a second. Inside a glass-walled conference room in New York, the clip was played on loop while PR scribbled phrases like narrative pivot and conflict renewal on whiteboards. Legal didn't even flinch. They knew the women had signed contracts that allowed their voices to be used if captured in work-related spaces. A producer finally spoke, grinning like a man who'd just found a missing puzzle piece. "We cut this into the reunion bonus episode," he said. "Market it as the truth behind the truce." No one in the room objected. Somewhere else in the city, Bambi stared at her phone, replaying her own words with a face that could cut stone. She knew the voice was hers, but she also knew context was a casualty when ratings were at stake. She'd been venting in a room she thought was private, her guard down for once. Now those words had been weaponized. Across town, Erica sat with her publicist, replaying her half of the clip. She closed her eyes when she heard her own voice, not because she regretted it, but because she knew how it would sound stripped of the hours that had led up to it. There was no room for nuance in the court of public opinion. Fans began digging for the source of the leak, and speculation moved faster than fact. Some swore it had to be a producer plant, others blamed the married cast wife still hiding in the shadows, and a smaller, louder group suggested one of their own team members had betrayed them. Tasha K stayed silent after the drop, letting the internet do her work for her. Every hour, new theories surfaced, each more conspiratorial than the last, until the truth didn't matter half as much as the chaos. By the third day, an industry event put Bambi and Erica in the same building for the first time since the leak. The press had been tipped off, so cameras hovered like vultures at the edge of the carpet. They didn't waste time pretending nothing had changed. Bambi stepped into the frame first, her voice even, her words pointed. "I was here for the alliance," she said. "You were never here for me." Erica didn't blink. "I was here for friendship," she replied. "You were here for revenge." The flashes went off like lightning, freezing the moment in pixels before either of them walked away. And far away from the lights, in a room where she could watch without being seen, Tasha K smiled. She hadn't even played the rest of the audio yet, the part with the third voice. The part that would change everything. The internet didn't cool down. It calcified. Every podcast host with a microphone had a take, and every blogger with a login had a theory, and none of them cared that the truth had edges. Bambi woke up to her name trending with synonyms for snake and steel, which is funny because she never promised softness. She sat at her kitchen island with a legal pad and did the thing nobody on television expects a woman to do. She strategized without bleeding. She listed dates, rooms, staffers, then drew a circle around a single phrase: green room access. Only a handful of people could have placed a recorder where the insulation wouldn't muffle the voices. And fewer still would know when to press record. Across the city, Erica was doing the exact same math with a different pen, underlining the same names, the same doorways, the same minutes before they went on stage, when glam rooms became confessionals. She didn't call Bambi. She didn't need to. War plans can be parallel without touching. VH1 converted outrage into oxygen. In a midtown conference room that smelled like cold coffee and victory, they boarded out a 3-act teaser. Act 1, the alliance. Act 2, the audio. Act 3, the truth behind the truce. A junior editor too young to be this cynical, and too talented to be this cheap, cut a version where Bambi's line about image bled directly into Erica's line about leverage. A perfect intercut that made it look like they were talking to each other through the wall. Legal cleared it. In 8 minutes, PR drafted copy about radical transparency and inviting audiences into the process. Which is corporate for we got caught and we're calling it art. The showrunner watched the cut twice, then asked one question that made the room tilt. Where did the audio come from? No one answered, because everyone already knew and nobody wanted to put their mouth on the gun. By noon, Tasha K posted a countdown without posting anything at all. A clock face with no hands. The kind of taunt that makes people build their own gallows. She didn't say third voice. She didn't have to. Commenters chanted it like a spell. Fan pages lined up suspects like a police procedural. The married cast wife's assistant. The floor PA, who always wore nervous shoes. The segment producer with a memory like a vault. Even Scrappy, because nothing says chaos like blaming the ex. Scrappy went live just long enough to inhale and exhale on camera, then said, "I ain't record nobody. Y'all want a villain so bad you forget who built the set." He didn't name production. He didn't need to. He closed the app and opened a folder titled Contracts. And for the first time in years his thumb hovered over delete. The first letter hit Bambi's inbox at 2:13 p.m. A polite threat in Courier font reminding her that work-related spaces are fair game for ambient capture. She laughed, which is not what they expected and exactly what they deserved. She forwarded the letter to her attorney with 2 words: pull scope. The second letter hit Erica at 3:01, this one softer. A, we value your voice note attached to a draft of a clarifying statement she could post that would keep the teaser intact. She sent back a red line that wasn't a note so much as a sermon. Remove implication, remove intercut, remove lie. At 4:45, the network pinged both camps offering a moderated reconciliation scene to contextualize emotions. Bambi replied, "First, I don't reconcile with edits." Erica replied, "Second, I don't contextualize weaponized audio." Night fell, and with it came the kind of event producers dream about. A charity gala where half the room is famous and the other half wants to be. Bambi stepped onto the carpet in a dress that didn't blink and a face that didn't either. Erica arrived 20 minutes later, sequins and spine, on a different entrance with the same gravity, cameras lined up like soldiers. Somewhere between flash and question, they ended up 10 feet apart. Not by design, not by accident. "You told them I was faking," Erica said, quiet enough to be intimate, loud enough to be caught. "You told them I was using you," Bambi answered, tone flat as a gavel. Before the third sentence could load, a handler leaned in to adjust Erica's hem and a different handler fixed Bambi's hair. And it was only later, on fan accounts, that people noticed both handlers wore the same Comes earpiece. They were not handlers, they were placement. The moment dissolved into handshakes with sponsors and a staged laugh for a brand partnership that would eventually post at the wrong time. Backstage, where the carpet curled into corridors that smelled like power and perfume, Bambi found what she'd been hunting. A laminated clipboard on a hook labeled Talent Flow, a neat grid that mapped the routes from glam to stage 2 green room. 2 initials repeated by both their rooms on the day the audio was captured. AR. She snapped a picture, doubled back to a hallway she'd learned with her eyes closed seasons ago, and waited. People reveal themselves on smoke breaks and phone calls. AR did both. "Yeah, we got it," the assistant whispered into the night, not noticing the reflection in the glass door. Not hearing the click that wasn't a lighter but a camera. Third voice lands Friday. No, she don't know. Bambi didn't step out. She didn't need a scene. She needed proof. She walked to her car with something better than rage. Leverage. Erica spent the same hour in a different kind of church. A boutique law office with velvet chairs and a receptionist who pronounced defamation like a love language. She laid the week on a table, the clip, the cut, the cadence of coordinated handlers, the letters. Her lawyer didn't bother hiding her smirk. "We don't fight whether you said it," the woman said. "We fight where and why it was recorded, who sold it, and how it was weaponized in post." She slid across a copy of an addendum no one talks about in the press tours, ambient capture limitations and duty of care. One line glowed like neon. "The company shall not intentionally stage or encourage private confessional conversations in spaces reasonably believed to be private for the purpose of eliciting content." Erica circled intentionally until the paper thinned. The countdown hit 12 hours and the city vibrated. Mendices posted a sentence that felt like scripture and threat. "Betrayal don't travel alone. It shows up with a camera." Yandi posted a boomerang of a candle with the caption "discernment," which half the internet took as shade and the other half as a subtweet to herself. The married cast wife posted a workout selfie with a caption about discipline, which is either coincidental or coordinated depending on how much TV you've survived. In the comments, the assistant AR hearted 3 messages about loyalty and deleted one about signatures, which only made it duplicate across 28 screens. At 7:58 p.m., Tasha K went live without going loud. No intro music, no ring, light tears, just a browser window and a folder named Hotel Atmosphere. "We're not playing the whole thing," she said, "because I don't pay legal bills for billion-dollar companies. We're going to play enough for you to understand." The weather. The waveform loaded. First, Bambi's line about image. Then Erica's line about leverage. Then, the room, feet, fabric, a door breathing, and a third voice that didn't belong to either woman slid in like a knife wrapped in silk. "Keep them on opposite sides until segment 3. If they talk, we lose the pop." It wasn't a stylist. It wasn't a makeup artist. It wasn't a random friend. It was someone giving stage direction like it was CPR. Tasha paused the audio right there and let the silence sit. "Now," she said, tasting the word, "who do you think says segment 3 in a green room?" Phones melted. Group chats caught fire. Editors hit rewind on their souls. VH1 dropped a statement in 6 minutes flat calling the audio fabricated or deceptively edited, which would have landed harder if a former segment producer hadn't quote-tweeted it with a single popcorn emoji. Bambi texted a screenshot of the Talent Flow clipboard to her attorney with the caption, "Find AR's contract." Erica sent the duty of care clause to 3 women she trusted and 1 man she didn't, adding, "You still think this is a storyline?" The assistant, suddenly very offline, was seen on a Ring camera carrying a banker's box to the trunk of a car, which is either a resignation or a relocation depending on who's paying for gas. By midnight, the city had split into churches, the ones that wanted blood and the ones that wanted proof. Bambi drove to a parking deck with no cameras and waited under a fluorescent light that flickered like a bad memory. Erica pulled in 3 minutes later and killed her engine but not her resolve. They didn't waste the beginning on apologies. That wouldn't land. Third voice, Erica said. Segment 3. Bambi answered. They laid out their pieces on a metal table that remembered every fist it had ever met. The clipboard photo, the ringcam still, the clause, the calendar invite from a month ago that used phrases like pair separation and staggered movement for narrative clarity. The air felt like a verdict. They didn't just catch us, Erica said. They placed us, and they sold us, Bambi added, voice steady enough to register as threat. The plan they built wasn't friendship. It was architecture. TRO filings. A forensic audio expert to authenticate room tone and directional mic placement. A preservation notice for all comes from the showrunner, segment producers, and assistants with access to greenroom keys. And a second plan, the one you only make when you're done being polite, alive, jointly controlled upload of their own, not the audio, not the sin, the paperwork. The sun still far. The clock still ticking. Tasha K returned to her live, with the promise she didn't need to make. Tomorrow, we run a name, not the wife, not the women. The mouth that said segment 3. The chat detonated into alphabets and theories. Somewhere in a hotel that had become legend, Acom's light blinked and nobody answered. Somewhere in a network tower, a hard drive spun like a roulette wheel. And somewhere between strategy and sleep, 2 women who had every reason to hate each other looked at the same enemy and, for once, didn't blink. The question wasn't whether the third voice existed anymore. The question was which title it wore on its badge when it said the line that broke Atlanta in half. The countdown hit its last 24 hours and Atlanta was a fuse. You could feel it in the way group chats stayed open past midnight, in the way even people who didn't watch the show were speaking in Tasha K hadn't posted since her promise, and that silence made the city louder. By the time Friday noon came, everyone had picked a suspect. The married cast wife's assistant, a rogue PA, the showrunner himself. Every possible culprit had their name run through the digital mud. But there was one detail no one could ignore. Only someone with the authority to use the phrase, segment 3. Would have both the clearance and the confidence to direct talent placement that close to live taping, and in that narrow list, the pool shrank fast. Bambi wasn't waiting for the reveal to make her move. Her attorney filed a TRO with a precision that felt like a slap in paper form. Demand for all raw green room footage, all internal placement, schedules, and the immediate suspension of any further broadcast using the Alliance Break audio. Erica had matched her stride for stride, sending her own preservation notice that named not just production, but the corporate parent. The legal strategy wasn't about stopping the show, they knew better than that. It was about making it so expensive to keep playing that the network would have to choose between drama and dollars. Back at VH1, the mood had shifted from smug to strained. Emails that used to end with smiley faces now ended with per counsel and pending review. Someone in legal floated the idea of settling, but PR panicked at the optics of paying the very women they'd just cut into villains. The showrunner called a meeting in a closed office, no assistants allowed, and asked the question nobody wanted to answer. If she names me, how bad does it get? The silence was its own verdict. One junior producer excused herself to the restroom and never came back, not to the meeting, not to the building. By 2 p.m., her resignation letter was already in HR's inbox. Scrappy posted a cryptic story of a chessboard mid-game, captioned, "Some pieces only move when you force them." The comments split instantly, half saying he was shading Bambi, the other half convinced he was signaling that production was cornered. Mendices added fuel with a post reading, "When you control the camera, you control the truth, until the receipts roll out." Yandy doubled down with a prayer hands emoji and the line, "May exposure come to those who profit from pain." At 7:58 p.m., the live started. Tasha K didn't drag it out this time. No countdown, no teasing headlines, just the audio file and a document side by side on her screen. The first 30 seconds were what the world had already heard, Bambi's voice, then Erica's, then the shuffle of the green room. And then the third voice came in, crisp enough to make your skin tighten. "Keep them on opposite sides until segment 3. If they talk, we lose the pop." Tasha froze the screen on that waveform and clicked over to the document, a talent flow sheet signed and initialed. The initials matched the third voice's owner, not the assistant, not the showrunner. It was the segment producer, a name so embedded in the franchise that fans had seen it in credits for years. And next to that name, on the sheet, was a title that made the internet's jaw drop: Talent Mediation Coordinator. The betrayal was almost elegant in its cruelty. The very person meant to keep things fair had been orchestrating the fracture. Tasha laid it out like a prosecutor, timestamps from emails, green room seating charts, receipts for last-minute schedule changes. She didn't need to accuse, she just needed to show, and the audience did the rest, tagging the producer in a storm of mentions until their accounts went dark. Bambi watched the reveal in real time from her attorney's office. Jaw locked, pen tapping against her binder. "That's intentional," her lawyer said, eyes already scanning the duty of care clause. Erica, on the other side of town, was watching from her kitchen counter, her phone lighting up with texts that alternated between sympathy and schadenfreude. She didn't answer any of them. She just hit record on a voice memo that started, "Now you see why we stopped playing. Nice." The network's first statement came 30 minutes later, corporate jargon about internal review and commitment to professional ethics, but the damage was done. 3 advertisers pulled their spots from the reunion special within the hour. A legal reporter tweeted that the TROs had been expedited due to material breach indicators, and in the most telling move, the segment producer's bio disappeared from the official site before midnight. But the women weren't done. At 9 a.m. the next morning, Bambi and Erica walked separately into the courthouse, each flanked by legal teams, each carrying binders thick enough to dent a desk. They didn't sit together, but they didn't need to. The filings spoke in harmony. Demands for retroactive pay, injunctive relief against unauthorized use of their likenesses in manipulated edits, and a joint claim for damages against the talent. Mediation coordinator for breach of duty. In the hallway after, reporters shouted for comments. Bambi stopped just long enough to say, "If you're going to cut me into a villain, at least send the royalty check." Erica followed with, "And, if you're going to make us your story, stop acting like you own the plot." The internet feasted. Fan accounts cut the courthouse footage with slow-motion filters. Blogs wrote think pieces about the end of manufactured alliances. The married cast wife posted a Bible verse about truth setting you free, which nobody believed. Wasn't shade? Tasha K dropped a final coda, a screenshot of a text from an unlisted number reading, "We'll settle. Name the price." She captioned it, "Guess the pop wasn't worth the drop." Weeks later, the dust hadn't fully settled, but the shape of the battlefield was clear. The network had announced a restructuring of production oversight, and new ethical guidelines that everyone understood as code for not getting sued again. The segment producer had vanished from public life. And Bambi and Erica, they weren't friends. They might never be, but they'd learned something sharper than trust. They'd learned that survival in this game, sometimes, meant standing back to back with the person you'd once faced across a fight. When the next reunion rolled around, they were both there, different chairs, different storylines. But when the moderator asked about the alliance and the break, Bambi leaned into the mic and said, "If you sell our pain, we'll invoice you." Erica added, "And if you try to make us bleed for ratings, we'll both make you pay first." The audience roared. The producers smiled too tightly, and somewhere in the control room, someone made a note that some women don't just survive the edit, they take it to court. And when the lights went down and the applause faded, the two women walked off opposite sides of the stage, not looking at each other, but not looking away either. In a city built on storylines, they'd just written one the network didn't own.